Hello brothers and welcome to Sigma Old Man channel. Not everything you touch is meant to be held. Some things are sent to remind you that you don't own the universe, no matter how untouchable you think you are. It's a cruel little paradox, isn't it? The Sigma male, the man who bends rules, escapes systems, and outsmarts expectations, suddenly finds himself outsmarted by life itself. Studies in human psychology show that the more unavailable something becomes, the more the brain magnifies its value. That's why the one woman he can't have doesn't just exist in his story. She hijacks it. The universe isn't playing Cupid here, it's pulling the rug out from under a man who usually lands on his feet. It sends her not as a gift, but as a glitch in his carefully coded reality. She is both a mirror and a barricade, showing him the cracks in his armor while refusing to let him pass. And in that maddening space between wanting and never having, he discovers truths about himself he never signed up for. It's almost funny, really. The man who can walk away from anything suddenly can't walk away from a ghost he never even touched. The irony? The universe is laughing too, and it's laughing at him, not with him. Number one, the universe's joke on certainty. Her unattainability is more than rejection. It's a surgical cut to his inflated sense of control. Sigma males move through life with a quiet confidence, often bordering on arrogance, because so many things bend in their favor. They don't chase approval, they don't get trapped in the usual games, and they rarely encounter resistance they can't eventually outmaneuver. But when the one woman he can't have steps into the picture, she slices through that comfort like a scalpel through skin. Suddenly he isn't the man with all the answers. Suddenly charm, intelligence, and silence, his usual weapons, fail him completely. It forces him to sit with an uncomfortable truth. He is not beyond defeat. And that is precisely the universe's point. The Sigma who believes he can't be cornered, who takes pride in being untouchable, now tastes a loss that isn't catastrophic but deeply personal. That sting lingers in ways no business setback, social rejection, or betrayal ever could. Because it's not about money, status, or survival, it's about ego. Her resistance humbles him, carving out a space where he has to admit he isn't entitled to everything he desires, no matter how rare he is. It prevents him from sliding into the very arrogance he secretly despises in others. Without her, he might start believing he's the exception to every rule. With her, he is reminded that even he can be disarmed, not by force but by denial. This cut is painful, but it keeps him alive in a way arrogance never could. It strips him of complacency and keeps his hunger sharp, his awareness awake, and his humility intact. Because no matter how strong he is, there will always be doors that remain closed. And in that uncomfortable reality, the Sigma male finds the only thing that keeps him from becoming the very tyrant he swore he would never be. Number two, the keeper of his softness. The Sigma male is not the cold, mechanical figure people often mistake him for. Beneath the armor of independence and self-sufficiency, there's a tenderness he rarely allows anyone to touch. Most people never see it because he doesn't trust the world with his softer side. He knows that vulnerability is often exploited, mocked, or taken for granted. Yet when the one woman he can't have enters his life, something shifts. She stirs that hidden part of him, the part he works so hard to bury. With her, he feels the impulse to drop the mask, to show the warmth, the gentleness, and the quiet care that nobody else ever gets to see. But the cruelty of the universe is that she is not his. She awakens his softness, then vanishes beyond his reach. What's left is not just longing, but the burden of carrying that tenderness alone. He can't switch it off now. She has already unlocked it. Yet he has no outlet for it, no recipient for the affection that's been set free inside him. That hidden gentleness becomes heavy, weighing on him in silence. This is where the torment lies. The Sigma male is comfortable carrying solitude, but carrying suppressed tenderness is different. Solitude is his choice, this is not. This is a forced exile from the very part of himself he wanted to give but never could. He becomes the keeper of his own softness, trapped with emotions that feel too raw to expose and too real to ignore. And perhaps this is why she lingers in his memory long after others fade. She isn't unforgettable because of what she did, but because of what she awakened in him. She proved that he isn't as detached as he pretends, that underneath his cool exterior is a man capable of profound depth. But instead of sharing it, he carries it, quietly, heavily, and endlessly. A private ache he'll never confess, but one that will always shape the way he sees love, trust, and himself. Number 3, the test of untouchable desire. The universe knows that Sigma males are not moved by the same temptations that trap ordinary men. Status, shallow beauty, or easy affection rarely sway them because they've trained themselves to live outside the reach of common desires. But the real test isn't in giving them everything, it's in giving them almost nothing. That's why the one woman they can't have becomes the sharpest examination of their strength. She isn't just a temptation, she is scarcity embodied, the rarest form of what they crave but cannot claim. This is where the battle unfolds, not on the outside but within. The Sigma male is forced to confront whether his willpower can withstand the ache of unattainable desire. Can he remain unmoved in the face of a hunger that digs deeper than physical attraction? One that stirs his ego, his pride, and his carefully guarded heart? For most men, desire is about indulgence. For the Sigma, it becomes about restraint. To resist her is to remain in control. To chase her is to risk becoming a slave to longing. Her presence is a kind of trap, but not the obvious kind. It's subtle, psychological, designed to peel away the layers of his discipline. The universe isn't mocking him with this test. It's sharpening him. If he gives in, he learns how fragile his control really is. If he resists, he proves to himself that hunger does not rule him, even when it comes dressed as the one thing he thought he needed. This is why the unattainable woman matters so much in the Sigma's journey. She forces him to recognize that true power is not about possession, but about mastery over desire. The test is never about getting her. It's about proving to himself that he doesn't need to, that the fire of longing can burn without consuming him. And if he passes, he walks away not just stronger, but freer, carrying the rare knowledge that even the sharpest hunger can be starved without breaking him. Number 4, the mirror of their own powerlessness. For the Sigma male, control is his quiet currency. He doesn't demand attention, he doesn't crave dominance in the obvious ways, but his life is built around the assurance that he can bend situations, navigate people, and carve his own path without relying on anyone. This self-mastery is what sets him apart. He thrives on being the man who doesn't need permission. But then comes the one woman he can't have, and suddenly, control slips through his hands. No amount of patience, intelligence, or detachment works on her. She does not yield, and that is where the mirror appears. She reflects back to him a truth he'd rather avoid. Even he has limits. Her presence isn't just about rejection. It's about shattering the illusion that his willpower alone is enough to shape the outcome of every situation. Around her, he finds that his usual strategies fall flat. The silence that intimidates others doesn't move her. The depth that fascinates most doesn't shake her. And the mystery that makes him irresistible elsewhere barely registers. For the first time, he's face to face with someone who remains untouched by his gravity. And that is where the sting lies. Because this isn't just about her. It's about him realizing that power is never absolute. The universe places her in his path not to humiliate him, but to dismantle his arrogance, to remind him that control has boundaries and life will always hold something beyond his command. She becomes the one force that resists him entirely, and in doing so, she reveals the uncomfortable side of his strength, the parts that fail when stripped of influence. This confrontation is humbling, but it's also necessary. Without her, he risks believing he is invincible, that he can manipulate every lock with the right key. With her, he learns the hardest truth. Some doors will never open, no matter how clever the hand that turns the handle. That mirror of powerlessness doesn't weaken him, it recalibrates him. It's the reminder that even the strongest man is still a man, and that the universe always reserves the right to deny him what he wants most. Number 5, the erosion of the lone wolf fantasy. The Sigma male builds his identity around the lone wolf myth, the idea that he needs no one, that his strength lies in being untouchable, self-contained, and immune to the messiness of attachment. It's a fantasy he wears like armor, and for the most part it works. Jobs, friendships, fleeting romances, he can detach without regret, walk away without looking back, and convince himself that nothing penetrates his core. But the one woman he can't have changes that entirely. She becomes the crack in his lone wolf facade, the living proof that his detachment isn't as indestructible as he thought. Her effect on him is subtle but relentless. He tells himself he doesn't need her, Yet he can't stop circling back to her in his thoughts. He tries to bury the pull, but the pull deepens. And every time he fails to let go completely, another piece of his lone wolf fantasy erodes. The very fact that he can't walk away from her with the same cold finality he applies everywhere else shakes his identity to its core. What unsettles him most isn't the desire itself, but what it represents: vulnerability. For a man who prides himself on being unshaken, here is someone who exposes his humanity in the rawest way possible. She proves that no matter how disciplined, distant, or controlled he is, he still has a breaking point. He still craves. He still aches. He still bleeds when touched in the right place. The universe uses her to strip him of his romanticized solitude. It shows him that the lone wolf image is not strength in its purest form. It's partly armor, partly denial. By refusing him the one woman who could dismantle his walls completely, life forces him to admit that his detachment isn't invulnerability, it's strategy. And like any strategy, it has its flaws. That realization leaves a scar he can't shake. He will never see himself as fully invincible again because she proved otherwise. And in that erosion lies a paradoxical gift. The Sigma male discovers that being human, with all its cracks and breaking points, might be more powerful than pretending he could ever be completely untouchable. Number 6, the collision of frequency. Sigma males carry a frequency that most people simply can't tune into. It's not arrogance, it's just truth. Their energy is different, quiet but commanding, detached yet magnetic, sharp enough to cut through pretense but calm enough to go unnoticed by the masses. Most women don't fully understand it, let alone match it. That's why when he finally meets the one woman who vibrates on the same wavelength, the connection feels electric. It's rare, it's raw, and it's undeniable, but the universe, in its twisted way, withholds her, not to be cruel, but to make a point. Resonance doesn't always translate into possession. That collision of frequency shakes the Sigma because it's the first time he feels genuinely mirrored. She understands the silences, the contradictions, the intensity he hides from everyone else. With her, there's no need for explanation, no need to filter, and that depth of recognition is exactly what makes her absence cut deeper than any rejection he's ever known. She is not just another missed opportunity. She is proof that his rare energy can be met, but not kept. The irony is that he always thought his rarity was his strength, his shield against dependency. Yet when it finally attracts someone just as rare, he realizes the flaw in that thinking. Frequency alignment doesn't guarantee permanence. Sometimes it's only meant to be felt, not owned. And that revelation dismantles one of his quietest assumptions, that finding someone like him would mean finally having someone who stays. The universe uses her to teach him that even when energy collides perfectly, timing, circumstance, and destiny can still intervene. That lesson is brutal, but it's also cleansing. It prevents him from believing that life is simply about finding a mirror and keeping it. Instead, it shows him that some encounters are meant to remind him of what exists, not what belongs. In the end, that collision of frequency becomes both his greatest ache and his greatest awakening. She proves he isn't truly alone in his wavelength, but she also proves he doesn't get to claim every resonance that matches his own. And that paradox, having found her, yet never keeping her, is what haunts him long after she's gone. Number 7, the training ground for emotional austerity. The Sigma male is no stranger to self-denial. He's walked away from shallow validation, rejected hollow status games, and lived without the comforts most men chase. But when it comes to the one woman he can't have, the discipline he thought he'd mastered is tested on an entirely different level. This isn't about walking away from noise or distractions. It's about facing a hunger that feels personal, piercing, and inescapable. She forces him into emotional fasting, into a state where desire is present, but satisfaction is impossible. And in that brutal tension, he learns the art of austerity. It isn't the kind of austerity born from bitterness or pride. It's the practice of starving without poisoning himself in the process. He has to learn how to carry longing without letting it rot into obsession, how to want without collapsing into neediness, and how to accept the ache without building resentment toward her or himself. That balance is excruciating because it demands that he hold on to desire while refusing to be consumed by it. Most men, when denied, lash out or spiral. They cling harder, degrade themselves, or transform rejection into anger. The Sigma doesn't get that luxury. His test is harsher. The universe forces him to sit with the craving in silence, without outbursts, without shortcuts, without self-destruction. It's a purification of sorts, teaching him that even the most powerful hunger can be carried with dignity. This training ground strips him of illusions. He realizes that he can endure emptiness without crumbling, that unfulfilled longing doesn't have to break him, and that desire loses its power when you stop expecting it to be fed. The one woman he can't have becomes less of a punishment and more of a forge, burning out his impatience, his entitlement, and his secret belief that wanting guarantees receiving. By the end, he emerges leaner in spirit, sharper in discipline. He learns that the highest form of strength isn't winning every battle, but knowing how to starve gracefully when victory is impossible. And though the ache remains, it no longer owns him, because he has mastered the hunger instead of letting it devour him. Number 8, the lesson of unresolved hunger. The Sigma male has built his life around solving things, problems, patterns, people. He doesn't chase chaos, he dismantles it. That's why the one woman he can't have becomes such a brutal paradox. She leaves him with an ache that no explanation, no logic, and no effort can resolve. And it's here the universe delivers one of its hardest lessons. Not every hunger is meant to be fed. Some cravings exist only to carve themselves into you, to remind you that absence itself can be the final answer. What unsettles him most isn't the denial of her presence, but the silence that follows. No closure, no clean ending, just the hollow echo of something that never fully began and yet refuses to disappear. For a man who thrives on clarity, that absence gnaws at him more than rejection ever could. It forces him to accept that some doors don't slam shut, they just stay half open, daring him to either linger or walk away. And walking away without resolution becomes the real test. This unresolved hunger is not a punishment. It's a lesson in restraint and reality. It strips him of the belief that everything can be earned, won, or understood with enough patience and intelligence. It humbles him into seeing that life doesn't owe him closure. Sometimes the unanswered ache is the closure. The beauty, if he chooses to see it, is that this hunger sharpens him. It teaches him to sit with longing without letting it hollow him out, to carry unfinished emotions without needing to force an ending. It engraves into his psyche a truth few ever accept. Some chapters end mid-sentence, and the unfinishedness itself is the ending, and while the ache remains, it reshapes him. It strips away entitlement, inflates endurance, and leaves him with a quiet wisdom that most men never reach. The one woman he can't have becomes less about loss and more about transformation. She leaves him hungry, yes, but it's a hunger that refines him, reminding him forever that even emptiness has the power to complete its own story. Number 9, the reminder that mystery must survive. For the Sigma male, life is a puzzle, and people are just pieces waiting to be arranged. He thrives on pulling apart patterns, decoding motives, and exposing the truths that others miss. It's part of his strength, the reason he can stay 2 steps ahead of almost everyone. But when the one woman he can't have enters his orbit, she shatters this rhythm. She doesn't fit the formula, she doesn't reveal her hand, and every attempt to analyze her only deepens the fog. She is the one mystery he cannot solve, and that fact alone unsettles him more than her absence. The universe uses her to teach him that some things are not puzzles, they're sacred. His instinct is to dissect, to conquer, to know, but with her, the deeper he digs, the less clarity he finds. Instead of answers, he discovers layers, contradictions, and an endless depth that refuses to collapse into logic. For a man used to clarity, this is maddening, yet it's also the very point. She forces him to confront the uncomfortable truth that not everything, and not everyone, is meant to be decoded. This unsolvable presence becomes a mirror of his own limits. It humbles him into realizing that life isn't meant to be reduced to systems or explained away. Some mysteries are meant to remain untouched, not because he isn't capable, but because touching them would destroy their essence. She is that living reminder, a force that stays beautiful precisely because she cannot be conquered by analysis or control. And in that frustration, the Sigma male learns reverence. He learns that mystery is not weakness but power, a kind of power that thrives in staying undefined. The universe doesn't give him her to own or to solve. It gives him her to remind him that awe is as necessary as knowledge, that surrender is sometimes more profound than mastery. She remains the one enigma he cannot unravel, and that is why she haunts him. Not because he failed, but because she proved that some mysteries are meant to survive untouched, forever reminding him that the deepest truths cannot be conquered, only respected. Number 10, the rebellion against ownership. The Sigma male lives and breathes freedom. He resists chains, avoids control, and designs his life so that no one has the power to dictate his moves. It's his creed, his identity, his shield against the world. But what he rarely admits, even to himself, is that when it comes to the rare things he actually wants, he expects ownership. Not ownership in the crude sense, but in the quiet belief that if something truly resonates with him, it should somehow belong to him. And this is where the one woman he can't have becomes his rebellion. She doesn't submit to his pull, doesn't bend to his gravity, and refuses to be possessed. She reminds him with ruthless precision that freedom is not his alone. Her resistance is not a rejection of who he is, but a declaration of her own sovereignty. She proves that just as he guards his independence, she has the right to guard hers, even if it means denying him. For a man used to existing outside the rules, this is a collision he doesn't anticipate. He wants her because she's rare, because she matches his frequency. But her very refusal becomes the proof that rarity doesn't equate to belonging. This lesson cuts deeper than pride. It forces the Sigma to confront his own contradiction. The man who demands freedom for himself cannot demand it selectively. If he truly values liberty, he must value it even when it works against him. She is the living embodiment of that principle, a reminder that freedom applies equally to others, even when it denies him what he craves. The rebellion she represents doesn't weaken him, it refines him. By refusing to be owned, she holds up a mirror to his ideals and asks if he can live by them when it costs him the most. In that confrontation, the Sigma male either evolves into someone who respects freedom universally, or he crumbles under the weight of his own hypocrisy. Either way, she changes him. Not by being his, but by proving she never needed to be. Number 11, the fire that burns without touch. For the Sigma male, intimacy has always been something he could control, measured, chosen, and often kept at a safe distance. He doesn't throw himself into cheap connections, and he avoids the empty performances most people call romance. But when it comes to the one woman he can't have, control slips, and he stumbles into a fire unlike anything he's known before. She awakens a passion that doesn't rely on touch, that doesn't need closeness to feel real. The intensity of wanting her burns hotter than many relationships built on years of physical proximity. This is the paradox the universe throws at him. Desire without contact, intimacy without possession. It's raw, unsettling, and strangely purifying. He realizes that true intensity isn't always in the kiss, the embrace, or the physical claim. Sometimes it's in the silent ache, the stolen glance, or the awareness that she exists just beyond his reach. That distance transforms the feeling into something sharper, more consuming, almost unbearable. And in that space, he learns that passion is not confined to touch. It thrives in the imagination, in the longing, in the unspoken tension that lingers between what is felt and what is forbidden. What makes this fire so dangerous is its purity. Because it's never consummated, it never fades into routine, never dulls with repetition, never becomes ordinary. It stays sharp, wild, and alive, feeding off absence rather than presence. Most men would think intimacy is defined by conquest, but the Sigma discovers that sometimes the strongest connection exists precisely because it's untouchable. This lesson carves itself into him. He begins to understand that intimacy isn't measured by how much he holds, but by how deeply something stirs him without ever being his. It's a fire that refuses to die because it was never allowed to burn out. And though it leaves him restless, it also reshapes his view of closeness. He learns that some of the most powerful bonds in life exist in the space between longing and restraint, and that the fire that burns without touch can be just as real, if not more haunting, than the one that consumes in his arms. Number 12, the guard against narcissism. The Sigma male walks a fine line between self-mastery and self-worship. He is highly independent, rarely seeks validation, and often thrives without needing the approval of others. While these traits make him powerful, they also carry a hidden danger, unchecked ego. When no one challenges him, when the world constantly affirms his ability to rise above systems and people, it's easy for him to start believing he is untouchable. And that's when the universe intervenes. by placing in his path the one woman he cannot have. She is not just a denial of desire. She is the crack in his armor. Her very existence reminds him that no matter how rare, how disciplined, or how brilliant he may be, he is not immune to powerlessness. With her, all the qualities that usually make him irresistible fail. His mystery doesn't pull her in. His silence doesn't unsettle her. His depth doesn't guarantee access. She stands as a wall he cannot scale, and that reality alone prevents him from drifting into the narcissistic illusion that he can bend everyone to his will. In many ways, she is his balance. By refusing to yield to his gravity, she forces him to confront humility. She exposes the limits of his influence and ensures he never forgets that mastery over self does not equate to mastery over others. Without her, he might be tempted to believe his path is flawless, that his independence elevates him above human weakness. With her, he is reminded that he is still human, still subject to longing, still capable of defeat, still vulnerable to the sting of desire denied. This lesson is subtle but essential. It doesn't weaken him, it preserves him. By stopping his ego from calcifying into narcissism, she keeps him grounded in the very humanity he often tries to rise above. She is not his possession, but his prevention, the boundary that ensures his greatness never curdles into self-idolatry. And while he may never thank her for it, the truth remains. Without the unattainable woman, the Sigma male might not just lose himself in arrogance, he might become the very thing he despises. At the heart of it all, the one woman the Sigma male can't have is never really about her. She is about him. She is the universe's scalpel, carving into his certainty, his detachment, his lone wolf myths, and his quiet arrogance. She awakens softness he wanted to bury, forces him to fast on desires he cannot feed, and reminds him that power without humility is nothing more than an illusion. Her presence isn't punishment. It's a lesson, one written not in victories, but in the ache of limits. Through her, he learns that mystery must remain sacred, that hunger doesn't always demand resolution, and that resonance doesn't guarantee possession. She shows him that even the man who prides himself on walking away from anything cannot always walk away unscarred. And in that scar lies the truth. The Sigma male's greatest strength is not in conquering everything, but in carrying what cannot be conquered with dignity. So while he may never claim her, he claims something greater, the wisdom to know that not all battles are meant to be won, not all longings are meant to be satisfied, and not all mysteries are meant to be solved. Some are meant to shape him, humble him, and remind him that even the rarest wolf must bow to forces bigger than himself. And that is why she lingers. Not as failure, but as the mark of growth. The woman he could not have, but the lesson he could not escape. If this hit you deep and opened your eyes to the hidden side of the Sigma journey, then don't just keep it to yourself. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss more raw, unfiltered truths like this. If you felt the weight of these words, drop a comment below. I want to hear your take, your story, your perspective. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them, because wisdom only grows when it's passed on. Finally, don't forget to like this video to push it further out into the world. Every click, every share, every comment is fuel to keep creating content that doesn't just entertain, but actually awakens.